Hi, welcome to Cauldron Her Daddy. I'm Soraya Johnson, a somatic sexologist and witch.
I am Meredith Hawley, an astrologer, human design reader, and witch.
Here we are today. We're going to talk about a subcategory of spellwork today. We're going to talk about some of the tools that can be used to protect yourself. Oh wait, let me step back for a second. I don't want to name a category like it's bad because it's not bad.
I mean, I think that we want to talk about spells and rituals that often get stigmatized.
Okay, I like that. Okay, good job. Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, yeah. So we're going to talk about banishments, hexes, curses, cord cuttings, things like that. So, and that's kind of a mixed bag. So, like, people don't necessarily associate all those things with stigma, but I think what we generally want to do is like dispel myths and sort of get to the heart of what some of these things are so that we can all understand it a little better and like practice it a little bit more freely.
And kind of talk about our own personal experiences with them, because like one of the things that's important to me about astrology and human design is that everybody has their own personal magic. And so I think we can talk about what has worked and not worked for us. And then for each person, I think like the technology of astrology, the technology of human design are their own things that you have to try on yourself. And like those, spellcraft is a technology that you have to try out for yourself and see how it fits on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good point. And that we all kind of get to select what goes into our own cauldron, And so
Yeah.
this is something that you can use for your cauldron if it feels good. And if not, then now you'll know more about it.
And
So
like
that's fun.
learn from our successes, learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, totally. Totally. All right. Well, let's see. Where do we want to start?
I was thinking with banishment. Do you want to talk about banishment? Because I haven't done banishment spells. I've had energetic banishments, but I haven't done it as a ritual.
Yeah. I've done it a few times. And what I usually have used banishment spells for is when I've been in a relationship with somebody that I need to not be in a relationship with anymore. And like even energetically. So like a person that I can't banish, for instance, would be my ex-husband because we have kids together. And while I can and have removed him from my emotional space, which I'll talk about in a little while when we talk more about cord cutting, I can't banish him entirely because his energy is still going to be around me, whether I want it to be or not. Like, and I'm fine. We're fine now. So it's like not a big deal. But, that's a person that will be in my life. But there are sometimes people who earn the privilege of being cast out of my life with different behaviors and actions. And in that case, I have occasionally used a banishment spell, which is really similar to regular spell work. I just simply have a different, like, kind of moment of being with the desire to get that person and myself to be fully separated and autonomous from each other.
I guess one of the things that comes up for me is I think we should talk about why people are kind of afraid to use this kind of spell and afraid to use a banishment. And and even like misuses of it, because I think the thing that comes up for me as kind of like a resistance around doing a banishment is like a couple things. One that's easier for me to dispel is like, what if there are no other people in the world? What if I banish this person who's been important in my life, and then there's no other people in the world, and then I'm an island totally alone, and I'm like, on a second level, there's kind of like, am I resisting the karmic lessons that I'm supposed to learn from this person? Am I like putting myself as more important than fate? These are kind of the objections that like come up for me about it. I think for me, when I energetically banished, I've energetically banished a couple of people one I did in more of a Reiki kind of way, and then one even like longer before that I did in a like closure, more of like a closure kind of way. But in that, I was still like, I still considered myself a Christian then, and I still went to church and stuff during that time. So that was more of like a prayer-based energetic
Hmm.
closure. But for me, I think the important thing about it is that a banishment is about your sovereignty over your energy. It's not even really about the other person as much
Yeah,
in the way that I understand it.
that I think that's true. And so, yeah, I think for banishment, it is absolutely about your sovereignty. And to, in one case, like I literally was like, I hope I never see this person again. And I haven't, which is kind of great. And so, yeah, the first time I did it, it was at the end of a relationship that was really significant. And some things happened in it that were really unsafe for me and for my kids toward the end of that relationship. And I also was living in the house that we had once shared together. And so we were in a very long court proceeding around dissolving our domestic partnership. And so it was quite taxing in a lot of ways and really tenuous for me to continue maintaining that shelter for lots of different reasons. So it I
Mm.
did a series of spells over a number of years in the house, and it was interesting to work with the spells that were already there because I had them actually I did mostly like kind of jar based spells at the time.
Okay.
So they were like buried in a couple of different places and one of them was under the house. So it was a really, I think, rich place of energy that I had been cultivating for a long time. So in that case, it was a matter of banishing somebody permanently from my life. And also, my intention was that that person would no longer reside on that property. Like
Yeah.
it was a deal I made with the land there
Yeah.
that this person would, while they retain ownership of the property, would not live there again. And
Right.
as far as
Right.
I'm aware, that he has not. So I think
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
How
I think, oh, go ahead.
so how did you so you did jars, and we walk through a little bit of what you did with jars?
Yeah, so in what I was actually doing with jars was not the banishment part.
Right.
The jars part was more generative of like me working again, like working with the land that the home was on and the space itself, like the energetic kind of physical container of that place to put my energy imprint on it and to communicate with it, like to commune with it and offer it something. So it was a lot of kind of familial spells and like happy home kinds of things and safety and sovereignty of that space. And so that was all really beautiful. What in the end happened was I did a burning spell for banishment. So I had some writings of that person and things, addressed to him. I had my own spell that I wrote on paper, and then I usually rip it, or sometimes I'll like tear like a spiral into that, and then I'll use that almost like a wick. And then I had a candle in my cauldron, and I intended to burn kind of a lot of things over a long period of time. And so I added rubbing alcohol and I did this outside. So I had some alcohol, salt, and these spells that I had written the banishment on. It basically is sort of like more in a form of an oath in some ways. I like to base it on a mudra that I learned from somebody who's named Linnea Howell years ago, which is you hold your two your pointer finger and your middle finger together, and then hold your ring finger and pinky finger down, kind of with your thumb, and that makes a bit of a circle on that side. And you take your pinky, or sorry, your pointer finger and your middle finger, place it on your third eye, and you say, "I see you, but you are not mine," and then turn that hand away from you and push it outward. So in this case, it was an acknowledgement of what he and I had shared and the relationship we had. It was also kind of a funeral for that relationship in some ways too. And
Yeah.
so it was like an honoring of it while also really clearly putting the energy of this is no longer a place for your energy to be around me and also around this location.
It was not correct for you anymore, and you had
Right.
established your energy
Hmm.
having a relationship with the land, so it was no longer correct for the land anymore either, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's right. And so it was born out of my desire and need to be sovereign and to no longer have that other person's energy kind of in a controlling position around me and over me. I had experienced some financial abuse and other challenges in that relationship, and I really needed to get it away from me. And so I did that spell. It burned for a really long time. And I actually had the remnants of that spell in my cauldron even until just a few weeks ago around Beltane when I cleaned out that cauldron in a different ritual. So yeah, so that was the first banishment I did. It seems to be quite effective, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking about, I think that what you said is really important. I think restoring your energy to your sovereignty to yourself in
Mhm.
a space where you have been controlled, because that's when I've done the energetic banishment also, is a space where I've experienced someone stealing money, taking advantage of me, controlling me. I think
Mhm.
that that is just a very appropriate space for that kind of spell. And I
Mhm.
think it ends up not even being about them almost,
Mhm.
even though it also is. It's about their encroachment into your sovereignty
Yeah.
in that way. I think the first time that I'm thinking of where I did something similar was actually with my dad. And with that, I actually had a conversation with him where I said, "Hey, my mom would say we didn't understand each other. We were misunderstanding each other." And I said to him, "Hey, I think we understand each other and we disagree." And he said,
Uh,
"Yeah, I think that that's 100% true." And for him, it almost seemed like he was interpreting it as a bonding moment. But in my energy, I was like, "And we're done." And then after that, I just didn't have the engagement with him. If he called to
Mhm.
yell at me, I would just hang up. If
Mhm.
he would spam email our family, and I just put it into a folder, and I was like, this is not mine. And that was true even when I considered myself a Christian. The second time
Mhm.
I was working for a number of people who stole a lot of money from me, or mostly stole labor from me, and I did kind of a more of a Reiki style finishing with them, where I closed the door on the office when I was leaving, and I said, you're you are for karma now. Your
Mhm.
karma, you're no longer mine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing because it does banish not only the person kind of from your energetic life, but it also banishes the ways that you were still aiming to kind of manipulate or control them in return.
Yeah.
And we have all these really interesting strategies for how we engage with abusive dynamics. And so it is something to also let go of in that process as well. And so it's
Yeah.
freeing both of you. Like it's not meant to be unkind to the other person necessarily, even though there can be anger. And I think anger is a completely legitimate energy to raise around a banishment spell or to allow to inform that spell. But I don't think that it's necessarily like a rage thing and it's not reactive. It is intentional and purposeful.
Right. And I think that, I mean, I was pretty angry in both of those situations, but I wasn't vindictively angry. Like in the
Mhm.
situation with the place that I worked at, like 6 months later, one of the people who had a lot of influence over I'll call it unfairness, um, was in a horrible wreck and was in the ICU after that for 6 months. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, well, karma is a lot meaner than me. Like, karma is not, I just meant, hey, you owe me some money. Not like, but with that person, I had ultimately decided that I thought that that person was a psychopath, like a genuine psychopath without
Mhm.
access to empathy. And I later talked to them, and they said that in the ICU, they had to learn about emotion,
Oh,
because
wow.
their brain didn't work, and it totally changed
Whoa.
their life.
Wow. That's really wild.
Which I think when we release people
Mhm.
to their own cycles, to the, whether you call it karma or whatever you call it, of their growth, the universe cares about that. You know, like the
Mhm.
universe has a better engagement with it
Mhm.
than us trying to control them back or manipulate them back.
Yeah, totally. I think it's similar for enmeshment.
Yeah.
Like relationships where I've been really enmeshed with somebody, I think have required a more clear ending that I've called a banishment. So,
Yeah.
like in that, the one I just mentioned for sure. But then I also more recently did another banishment with somebody like less severe, it felt like. And so it felt lighter to me to let it go in a lot of different ways, but it also felt necessary to mark that goodbye with a ritual. So that one I did a spell. I let it sit for a few days, kind of seasoning it. I read it a few different times. And it was really infused with a lot of love and grief, but also like the hope of, hey, like we're we're like two seeds flying off of this flower. Like the flower is come and gone, and now our turn to now go and like propagate wherever we're going to propagate. And that will be in different fields, And so it's really more like that in this case. And it didn't come with that kind of, in the place where I was communing with the property I lived on, that was a different kind of collaboration. This one wasn't necessarily like, if I ever I don't want to see this person again. I mean, I don't necessarily, but I more of don't want to interact with them, and I don't want to have the like energetic threads that continue to connect me to them. And this really does allow me to actually allow those to kind of come back to me. So it's really a reclaiming of my own, again, sovereignty, but it's almost like taking the fragmented parts of myself that have been in this enmeshment. It's like you pull fabric apart and what you have is a lot of threads, like thousands of threads. And so it's really like pulling the threads that are mine back into myself instead of into this fabric where I was building a different kind of enmesh relationship that isn't right for me.
Yeah, when you said pulling it back, I was like, not pulling the person back, but you mean pulling your own energy back to
Mhm.
you where it
Mhm.
should live correctly. I think that
Yeah.
that is such a tricky experience because I think most of the time when we've been victimized by somebody, legitimately victimized by somebody, it's hard to also see the ways that we've tried to control them
Mhm.
to make them safe for us,
Right.
right? Which
Right.
also imposes our will on them. And so, in a lot of ways, I think when we're talking about banishment, we're talking about exactly what you said, like pulling back our energy to ourselves and releasing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a beautiful and complete letting go.
What to you is different between a banishment and a cord cutting?
That's a great question. And honestly, I don't know that they're different to me necessarily. I mean, they're really about you being in your sovereignty. I think it's just a different methodology or like a different imagery to use. Right. And so for me with spell work, I usually am writing something and raising energy around it and burning it. That, I mean, it's a process that I usually do. In the case of my more recent banishment, I also took the clean part of the ashes down to the river to release into the current, which was significant, like in that relationship also, and just to me as a person. And then I took some of the water from the river in the jar I brought the ashes down with and brought it back to water some seeds. So it was kind of a sweet one. With cord cutting, I've more done that in like a liminal space, kind of like a meditation. And the last time I did that, I haven't experienced it. Like I don't really feel the kind of cord imagery. I really feel it more like vine, like it's a plant type thing
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
me. And so the time that I did a cord cutting was with my ex-husband when we went to court and I felt terrible for him about it when it was a legitimately just scary situation. But I needed to let go of my emotional, like the manipulation I was still doing to try to appease him, right? So
Yeah.
letting go of my need for him to be okay and for me to just be responsible for my own well-being and self. Like, even though we had been divorced for several years by the time this happened, I was like, oh, I didn't realize how much I was still holding on to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really good point. I think one line that might be there between cord cutting and banishment is like whether you're maintaining ongoing interactions with the people.
Hmm.
Like when I had legal clients, a few times I encouraged them or helped them do cord cuttings with the people on the other side of the lawsuit.
Hmm.
And I found that to be energetically profound for
Yeah.
people. They shifted, but they were still interacting with the people, so it's not the same as a banishment because they were
Right.
saying, I need, like, I'm entitled legally to money through this process. I'm
Hmm.
entitled to something through this process. So they weren't fully banishing the
Hmm.
person. For me, it's interesting because I've seen some like criticisms of like candle cord cutting, and I have some criticisms of candle cord cutting, and I also think it's really interesting because I love candles and I'm a very fire
Hmm.
person, and I like every spell that I do to involve a candle. It's just,
Yeah.
I think, correct for me.
Hmm.
And also, I think that you kind of have to decide in your energy where you are with the relationship before you decide the mechanism for bringing your energy back to yourself, I guess. Because, like,
Hmm.
so I've done cord cuttings with people that I'm still in relationship with as meditation, and I love it as meditation. I guess I have a judgment that a meditation cord cutting is better than a candle cord cutting. This is my judgment. But the reason for my judgment is that I think a candle cord cutting is a divination. And I think meditation cord cutting is an energetic practice of like releasing and retrieving and severing unhealthy ties without severing all ties to the
Hmm.
person. So,
Hmm.
like, the meditations that I've done always involve like you get into a meditative state, you go into your safe space, your garden, the other person approaches, and you're connected by vines, by court, whatever it is. Like sometimes people see like electrical wiring, whatever it is. And but then you're also connected heart to heart as all beings are connected, and that never gets severed, and you
Hmm.
honor that connection heart to heart that you
Hmm.
have with the person or the entity. I did a candle cord cutting the other night about my relationship to the law. And it was interesting because I kind of wanted to do it as a divination. And it was kind of a profound divination experience for me because I don't get to, as a person in society, I don't get to completely sever my relationship to the legal system. Like we all
Hmm.
have social contracts with each other. We're all part of community. It's not something that's, but I was interested in like, how is this process going for me? What does this
Yeah.
energetically look like? And the way the candles burned was meaningful to me to watch,
Hmm.
I guess.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, I mean, how did you feel after you did that? You're saying the meditation one is better, but as your personal, for more correct for you maybe,
Yeah.
but kind of curious about that experience. Like what did you notice about how those candles burned, and like what was the divinatory kind of process or message that you got?
Yeah, so the way I did it was I took a plate, just a plate that I use, and I did a circle of salt around the edges of the plate, and then I had a white candle and a black candle. The black candle represented me, the white candle represented the law for a number of reasons, personal reasons. And then I carved into the black candle self, and I carved into the white candle legal system, and I tied them with a cord and then lit the candles and watched them burn. And the cord started to be severed on the black candle side, which made sense to me.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
in a very like blazing kind of, I was actually surprised at how big the flame was. And then
Hmm.
as it started to, and it had this look of like like, I'm sorry to use this language, but like a crucifixion kind of look of like,
Yeah.
this is the complete, like, just blaze of devastation, which is correct.
Yeah.
For my experience.
Yeah.
And then the white candle kind of did the same once the flame got to it. And they both very quickly burned down after that and just were gone, like just basically disappeared and were not
Wow.
like it all just burned, which is kind of interesting because I've done other cord cutting rituals where you take the cord and cut it with scissors, which I also think is not a divination. I think that is more of a ritual practice
Mhm.
intention, and then you burn the cord and then you release the cord like to the river or
Mhm.
flush it or whatever you want to do to have it not be present for you. And with those, I've used the same type of cord and they have burned very slowly. And this
Oh,
just like blazed across the the cord.
that's really funny.
Yeah.
I love that so much. I love it. And that's kind of what makes magic so great is like it can be really meaningful and cute. Like the first banishment spell I was talking about, that it burned for like several hours. And
Yeah.
that was part of what made it so feel so magnificent to me, was that it was just like going and going and I could keep feeding it if I wanted, but I just allowed it to burn all the way down. And then it left this stuff in my cauldron for a long time, which I then really only used that cauldron for the next banishment spell that I did years later. And now it's all fresh and renewed again. So it's like kind of a beautiful thing. But it's interesting because, you're a fire person. And so this candle thing makes a lot of sense. And there are certainly a lot of rituals around cutting cords, like with scissors. And I'm talking about it like vines, and I think it's because I'm a gardener. Like, I think I experienced so much of life like that. And so when I did cut the cord with my ex-husband, I felt it emerging again and again. And it was like I had to physically do this little motion, like I was plucking a weed, and it was like a little onion. And to like keep pulling this little onion out of my chest again and
Yeah.
again until it just stopped regenerating, because that's what happens with me. Like my energy, it's like, I don't know, maybe it's just how watery I am or something, but there's a recurrence for me of like sometimes, and not in the banishment spells, but in this particular one, of like, well, are you sure? Or like, because I
Yeah.
can't really shut the door to him entirely, I just
Yeah.
had to really shift that. So it was a matter of continuing to choose to cultivate that now weeded out space in me. So it is like I do experience some relationships like that, or those ties almost like a weed that I have to just keep kind of vigilantly pulling whenever I see it popping up. And like, eventually the root is removed enough that it doesn't keep coming back. But
I
that's
think that's so
an interesting way.
common. And
Hmm.
I think, like in part of the work I've done, it's involved like abusive domestic partnerships, things like that. But even in workplaces, I think like I think that the statistic, I'm making this up, but I think this is true, that the statistic is something like it's typical for people to leave relationships 9 to 16 times. And like whether they're abusive or not abusive, there's no difference in leaving it. And I think it's because interpersonal connection, like our attachments are so profound and that is important to us. And I think you have to honor that it's not a like, oh, I guess that's done. But sometimes it
Yeah.
is. Like it's not done until it's done. And then when it's
Hmm.
done, it's like you don't even,
Hmm.
you just wouldn't grow the onion again. Like,
Yeah. Right. Cause the onion's done being there and it's like it's all over. But it is true. It's like it is such a sometimes it can be a process. And there's something important, I think, of allowing ourselves to experience it that way, instead of assuming that it's a one and done, like this is all gone and done forever. Sometimes it's not. And sometimes that's okay. You're like you're clearing and cultivating that area. And
or
honestly, like part of replanting, like part of keeping it from the weeds from coming out is like, what are you planting there now?
yes.
And that's how you
Yeah.
really do it.
Yeah. That was the other thing I was going to say is I think that like you have to identify what the dynamic is. You have to de-identify with it to change it. You have to see it as not part of yourself. You have to see that onion as the onion, not as
Yeah.
you.
Yes.
And then you have to
Yeah.
decide what you're going to put in its place,
Hmm.
or else it is kind of. And and I think a lot of times, especially in like romantic relationships, we're like, oh, I that means I have to find a new relationship. But really the most profound thing you put it in its place is yourself, is like
Yes.
what is correct for you? What do you love about
Mhm.
you? What's your relationship with you? Which sounds cheesy, but like I think is much more effective than
Mhm.
finding a new person who might just be a new version of the old thing.
Well, it's still giving your sovereignty away. Like finding a new relationship to replace the old one isn't the point. You're looking at how am I shifting this energy to be back in my own power? That's what it's for. And
Yeah.
it is true. Like we can't, in a lot of cases, like for me, in a lot of cases, I've developed into unhealthy relationship patterns with people. And that's where I'm like, oh, I'm doing the thing again. And so in some ways I also am practicing cutting cords with that pattern. Like I need to shift how I'm relating to people because it's not healthy and it's not giving me the kind of lush beautiful life that I want. And so how do I actually bring in the fertilizer to prepare the soil that is me and
Right.
plant what I want in my garden? Like that's really what it comes down to for sure.
I think that's so true. I think that that is really important, both with any of the things that we're talking about, actually, because I think like when you remove, even when you move furniture in your house, the dust bunny collects where the old furniture was, you know,
Mhm.
when you pull a weed out of your garden, it's not like there's not another weed that's gonna
Mhm.
come,
Yeah.
but
Right,
like
a
you
lot
can,
of weeds will just regrow themselves from, like, the tiniest, like, hair of a root, like, that's
right,
the magic of plants.
right. But if you plant something different there, it doesn't happen in the same way. That new
Mhm.
plant takes up the space. So I do
Yeah,
think it's important to recognize what is not correct for you. It's equally important to start allowing what is correct for you, I think.
totally. I
Yeah.
think so too, and I think nourishing yourself, like, I'm thinking of, let's say I pull, like, those nasty thistle things that have pokey leaves, and they grow in a thread of like, their roots shoot out to other places, and so anytime you start seeing those pop up, they'll, like, create a whole field of themselves really fast.
Right.
So you wanna dig them out, but, like, let's say I dig some of those out. I've done all of my work to, like, let's say there's a 5 by 5 patch of these thistle things. I've cleaned it all out. I've gotten those roots out as much as possible. I also need to, like, make sure this dirt is clear and, like, has the nutrients it needs to grow something else, because that's the other thing is, like, recognizing the value of the nutrients that are already there. And like also in some cases, not in the case of these kinds of weeds, but in others, you might compost things. You might, I mean, you can compost weeds over time, but like even the churning in the matter, like if it's clover or something, you till it into the ground, you can use that. Like I think there's so many beautiful ways that we can take back our energy, but also really thinking about it as a process of almost like also taking back your own resource, your energetic resource to
Yeah.
feed back onto yourself. Like, I think that's another place is like our relationships can drain our energy, whether we're paying attention to that energy drain or not. But like, if we're consciously taking that back, then we really do return the flow to ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's so true. I think I don't know. I guess like I think it can be easy when you're in an unhealthy relationship to get really overwhelmed by that idea because it's like first I have to acknowledge that this isn't correct for me, but some parts of it are correct. And so I don't know
Mhm.
how to disentangle those components from it. And I think it can be really easy for us to make things all or nothing. Like, um, is this person toxic or is this person a narcissist or is this person like my soulmate, my twin flame, and
Mhm.
like get really extreme about it. And I think like for me, the nice thing about doing a cord cutting is you can almost, if you do it as a meditation, you can almost see the different components and say, I do want to keep some of this. I
Mhm.
am allowed to keep some of this. And I think a lot of times, I think we both have had the experience of being like, I love this person. Like you were saying about your last banishment, like that is done in love. Like like say there's so much I love about this person, and also I need to honor myself first. Like
Hmm.
I need to not be paying into these energetic dynamics that are unhealthy for me, I guess.
Right, right. And in a lot of ways, how can I change my own relational patterns when I'm with people who are engaging in those patterns and won't stop them? Well, I'm going to be involved in that inertia, like it will pull me along and I'll continue doing the same behaviors that I don't really want to do anymore. And I think there's some of that too is that stepping back and saying like how do I be accountable to myself? Like how
Yeah.
do I build the trust with myself? Part of it is stepping back and saying, okay, like, here's what I'm getting out of this. Here's what I want to keep. Here's what I can let go. Like, yeah. And some of this is gradual. Like you're saying, I don't think that we have to always cut and run. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not always banishing people, all the time or anything like that. But there are times
Yeah.
where it is necessary. And I don't know. Like, I think
I
that's a good practice.
I was just thinking while you're talking about it of like what examples there are of it. And this example came up for me of I was doing this presentation this one time for a group of lawyers, and I was talking about toxic work environments and just like simple steps to create a healthier work environment without having to quit or fire people, like totally sever ties without
Mhm.
having to do a banishment.
Yeah.
And one of the people said, that they were a partner in a law firm and another partner would come into their office and yell at them. And like, how do you deal with somebody who's like out of control like that and unpredictable like that? And I was like, well, like, this is kind of simple, but have you tried locking your door?
Hmm.
And later, this person said, like, that completely changed my life. Like, just the permission to just lock my door
Yeah.
sometimes when I wanted to totally changed the dynamic. And it was something that simple. Like, for me, in my workplace situation, I had to accept the fact that I might get fired for telling the truth and advocating for myself, but
Hmm.
my safety was more important than having a job.
Yep.
And just that permission, even though that sounds conceptual, made me start to say, whoa, what are you doing? What's going on? And that's like, I can't get fired is one of those like onion weeds, right? Like,
Yeah.
I can't get fired.
Yes.
I can't lock my door. I have to make them happy or I won't be safe. I think this happens a lot in romantic relationships
Hmm.
too. Like, if you share a bedroom, are you allowed to lock the bedroom door? Yes, you
Hmm.
are.
Yeah, right. It is your space. So, and
Yeah,
also better yet, if you can have separate bedrooms, because like, let me just say, sleeping alone is fucking good.
I love it.
I mean, most everyone gets better sleep that way. I'm just saying, almost everyone.
But in a lot of controlling relationships,
Yeah.
people have there's a sort of an implicit agreement that people aren't allowed to have their own space.
It's implicit and explicit though. I mean,
Yeah.
in some cases it really can be, but it is an interesting thing. Like I have a lot of friends who've in recent years started having separate bedrooms. They're long-term partners. And I really think it's really interesting that culturally we expect not to have our own space when we get married or like move in with
Right.
somebody. And I just think maybe we should change the expectation because we don't change like as an idea of a person. Like we still need our space. So
But I
I'm
mean,
just
I think
saying,
we do that with kids though. We
yeah.
say, this is my house, so your bedroom is part of my house, so you don't have your own private space either. I think it's
Oh, people do. Yeah, that's true. I
I
think
think
that's
it like,
gross
yeah, but
because
I
it's
think
disrespecting people's autonomy. And I think that's evil from the beginning. Like, I think that's one of the greatest offenses against humanity is just like, you can't have any privacy. Like, I'm sorry. Like, leave your kids alone a little bit sometimes.
I think like I think it does speak to, though, the same dynamic of why we maybe have pushback around doing banishments or cord cuttings is like, without me, this person will die. If I don't
Right.
give them my energy, this person will be harmed. Like, what will they do without me? I care for them. And I think we
Hmm.
do that in that same way with kids, where we say,
Hmm.
well, they rely on me. I have to be able to go into their bedroom when they don't want me to for their safety.
Hmm.
Like, because they need me.
Mm.
And I think that we kind of miss that each individual, like, is sovereign. Like, that
Yeah,
we don't respect their sovereignty. And in that way, we're not getting consent and it's
totally.
a violation. And
Yes.
I think like that also speaks to when a banishment, when a cord cutting is appropriate, is when you're restoring your sovereignty, but you're also offering the other person their sovereignty.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. And that's actually, I think the act of doing that is, I always have said, when you make a decision that's right for you, it's right for everyone else, even if you feel like you can't make the decision because it's going to disrupt other people's lives. Well, like it might. And that sucks because no one likes their life to be disrupted. But also, it is true that things generally work out for the good of everyone involved
Even
when
if
you're
they're
able
mad,
to
I
do
mean,
that.
they may be mad though. I think that that's the
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying everyone's going to be happy. I just mean it's for the best, meaning the
correct. Yeah.
highest best. Like it's not
Yeah.
a thing under your control. It's every individual has to make their own choices. But the truth is, like, not respecting other people as sovereign and capable of, if they're an adult meeting their own needs, like that's a problem. Like, really consider, what side of codependency am I on right now? Like,
Right.
that it's hard. It's really hard because we are modeled like codependency is the normal type of relationship. Like it still is. If you've ever listened to an Adele song, you know what it sounds like. Like that is literally every single song I've ever heard Adele sing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people get really I'm watching the new people get really scared of it though. I'm watching the new season of couples therapy with
Mm.
Orna Gralnick. And it's like pretty intense, and one of the participants at one point I was watching last night said, "What's so wrong with enmeshment? Enmeshment is great. Like, we're together, we're supporting each other. And that, like, we are sharing a life. Why is enmeshment so bad for you?" And I was like, okay, I kind of respect the honesty there, because I
Mhm.
think that we get afraid that if we're not enmeshed, if we're not in a unhealthy way relying on each other, then we lose the relationship. And I think it's hard to pull back from that and say respecting this other person's sovereignty is actually having a healthier relationship with them, and maybe even a deeper relationship with them.
Yeah. I mean, if that's what we're wanting and are open to as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like part of it too, is what are the limitations that we have
But
on our
even if
end?
they're not wanting, you're still honestly relating to that real person instead of
Yeah.
their potential.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And the idea of what they could or should be. And yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you. Oh my gosh, we're just here on the same page.
Same
I'm
here.
curious, Meredith. I haven't really dabbled in hexes and curses too much. I think the one hex I would say is the that was attached to my first banishment, about like basically also
Yeah.
banishing off that property. That was a hex.
Yeah.
But that was me assigning a consequence or something,
Yeah.
basically, in some way.
Yeah.
It was really me saying this is my rightful place, and that therefore that person can't be here because my energy is imprinted on this place. And so that was really what it was. But you've dabbled a little bit more in hexes, and I think interestingly, like in society level hexes as well.
Yeah. I love a hex. So I think of a hex as kind of similar to what you're talking about with a banishment, but I think there's room in a hex to create an energetic shield that allows the malefic energy to bounce back towards the person, or to neutralize the malefic energy. And I think a hex is appropriate when you're dealing with some kind of actually harm based malefic energy, which I think is kind of different. That I think you can hex a person, or create a hex about a person, but I think like a banishment is probably more appropriate with somebody that you've had a close relationship with. To me, a hex is saying, I'm sovereign in my space, which any spell is saying. This energy is absolutely never allowed in this space. And I like exorcise this energy from my bubble, my space bubble. And I do say anyone who intends to put that energy on me may bounce back on them threefold. I say that that's correct for my energy. It's not correct for everybody's energy. And sometimes that feels bad for people. So I don't think that there's like a prescriptive way to do a hex and like you're doing it wrong if you instead. I think like another totally valid way to do it is any malefic energy that comes toward me in that way, I neutralize. Like that's a
Mhm.
totally fine way to do it. I've tested this out in a number of ways. And for me, I feel like some kind of correctness with it bouncing back to people. I've definitely heard people say that they don't feel correct about that, and I honor that, and it's totally fine. So, for example, the first hex I ever did was the Putin Hex, and that was an international hex that people did with a ritual that was to honor Ukraine. And I did Peace Corps in Ukraine in 2003. And so I like lived in Eastern Ukraine where a lot of the really terrible conflict is happening. Like
Mhm.
I lost touch with one of my favorite students when
Mhm.
all of this happened, and he was living in Russia. And so I don't, he was my birthday twin too.
Oh,
So it was pretty stressful. And I had later somebody reach out through his accounts, which made me nervous. That clearly wasn't
oh,
him. So
mhm.
that's stress. Anyway, I when I heard it was happening, I was like, absolutely, I'm involved. And this is before I did any witch training, but I don't know if you're a witch, you're a witch. You
Yeah.
don't have to do witch training to
Everything
be.
else is like decoration. Though it's like
Yeah.
fun to learn technique, but if you have the talent, you have the talent.
Well, and then sometimes also you run into problems like what I will talk about in a minute, and you're like, I don't know why that went wrong, but I have something to learn here. And then I do think that you find the right teacher comes to you and you
Mhm.
figure it out. So the Putin Hex was really great, and to me felt so energetically correct that I was like, it's interesting that we um stigmatize this kind that it sounds evil or something, because
Mhm.
the whole hex was about absolutely surrounding Ukraine in protection, and that all malefic energies pointed towards Ukraine would be like returned to the person sending them. And to
Mhm.
me, there's nothing inappropriate about that. Like
Yeah.
it is just you are allowed to protect your space.
Mhm.
And I think that a hex creates a energetic rule for you that does that's more generalized maybe than a banishment, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did the second hex I ever did also before I did witch training was around the 2024 presidential election, and I did a hex to protect the country around the potential of a Trump presidency. And so I did it as a ritual, like a burning ritual. It went really nice. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to do a ritual to welcome the Kamala Harris presidency. And I lit I burned something in a bowl, a little bowl, and it turned into a inferno. Like it blazed up and then scorched the bowl. And I was like, well, this can't be good. And then like a couple days later, I touched the bowl and it cracked into like five pieces. And
Oh
I was
wow.
like, this seems bad. And sure enough, it was. And then I was like, okay, maybe I can make this work. Like after the election results came back, I was like, I still want to like make this work some. I don't know. I was pretty committed to this ritual. So I was like, I'm going to get some kintsugi, which is the Japanese art of mending with gold. And
Okay.
I'm going to repair the bowl because I want the country to repair around the divisiveness that is created by the Trump presidency. And so I was like, okay, order my kintsugi, get it all set up, get everything ready, and start repairing it. And I developed like almost a full body rash at like itchy, terrible rash, like all over my arms. For 6 months, I
Ugh,
had a
that's so
rash.
long.
And
Six
then
months.
I didn't know what it was. I didn't realize it was from the kintsugi because
Hmm.
I was walking. It was like, I was walking my dog and I was like, maybe it's poison oak. And it turned out, PSA, kintsugi is the bonding oil in kintsugi is poison ivy oil. It's the irritant in poison oak and poison ivy. So it turned out this was all over my house at this point because I had
Oh
not
my God.
realized what was going on with. I had to throw away so much, and I was just like, okay, I need to learn something. Something was not correct in what I was doing with this and is coming back on me. And I think like this is why I kind of do take this threefold law that whatever you send out comes back to you three times kind of seriously, like because
Mhm.
I had poison oak for 6 months because of my incorrect spell. So I'm here ahead of you making these mistakes so that you don't have to make them. So I ended up so I'm a second degree Cabot Kent witch, and I ended up doing the Cabot Kent trainings in part because I was like, I know I did this wrong, but I'm not sure what I did wrong in this ritual. Like, I know this came back on me, and I could just energetically tell that it was a lesson, like, that it was to be
Mhm.
like, can't do spells like this. Like, it's not right. And what I realized about it is the hex that I did to send protection to the country just sends goodness to the country. It adds whatever positivity that we can add. There's nothing incorrect about that. It shields and protects to the extent that my energy can do that. When
Mhm.
I said we're going to have a Harris presidency, although that also intended good, it was controlling over Harris and it was not correct for her. So, although I was saying, hey, I want this thing that you say you want, and I'm doing a spell to make it happen, because it added control over her, for me, that's not energetically correct way to do
Yeah.
a spell.
Okay. This is going to sound really funny, I think, but yesterday you were just talking, I think it was just yesterday, you were talking about the way that legal work was feeling of you doing things that other people said they wanted, but they didn't really want.
Yes.
It's so wild that your magic is reflecting that same
Oh,
energy. Like
totally.
what a fun pattern. Like
No,
it's
and
cool because like the way we do anything is the way we do everything, right? Like
right.
we have these things, they're just themes in our lives and like I have them too. It's so interesting. Yeah.
I mean, it's made me completely, honestly, it contributed to me rethinking how I do all of my work.
Yeah.
And like, even when I still was doing legal work, but also when I got my Cabot Kent certification, I had a couple of people reach out and say, will you do this spell for me? And I had this feeling of like, for some reason this feels not right for you, even though you say you want it. And like I checked in with them and they were like, no, 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 I want it. And then later, after the spells didn't work, I didn't have any like negative ramifications because I left it open enough to be
Mhm.
like, there's something weird here, but I'll do this for this person. And like things that they had to do to confirm the spell, like I made it a not controlling situation, but it still didn't work because they didn't want it. But now I am more like really sitting with how much our magic is our energy and like
Mhm.
what is the correct way to engage with that with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think about it as like sine waves almost, just the way that our energy actually flows and the way that like what a sound wave actually looks like and how a record is like an engraving of the sound waves that is read by the needle. I mean, it's sort of that, like it's our own kind of tune that we play. That's so
Yeah.
interesting.
That's a good way
Yeah.
to say it. That's a good way to say it. Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
like we do interact with each other and we
Mhm.
can contribute magic to other people, but I think going back to what we've said a bunch of times, you have to respect other people's sovereignty. And like, I
Mhm.
think a foundational principle of any of this kind of spell work is attuning towards the sovereignty of other
Mhm.
people rather than setting your control, even if it feels positive, even if they say
Yeah.
it's what they want, like setting your control over other people. So I had someone reach out recently and say, ask if I would do a spell for them because they were afraid of flying. And I like handled it really differently. And I was like, that kind of thing is all about your sovereignty. And what you have to do in that kind of situation is thank the fearful thoughts for protecting you and release them. But it's not about me doing a spell for you to never have fearful thoughts because that invades your sovereignty.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how did you approach it?
How did I approach the
Yeah. Like, did you do the spell or were you just like, no, you do it?
No, I just said to them, here's what you have to do. Like, you
Hmm.
have to understand that you're sovereign over your mind, you're
Hmm.
sovereign over your thinking, and your brain is trying to protect you by
Yeah.
terrifying you. But when it does that, it's like a puppy barking at the mailman. Like, you can't be like, you asshole, shut up, because now you're
Hmm.
just in a fight with something that's going to win. Like, you're not
Yeah.
going to win about the puppy not barking.
Hmm.
And instead, what you can do is say, oh, thank you so much for protecting me. We're moving on to something different. Oh,
Hmm.
thank you for terrifying me, brain. We're going
Hmm.
to think about, um, like, all, we're going to think about, I don't know, I planted tomato plants. Like, so let's think
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to think about a safe landing instead. And like in Cabot Kent witchcraft, one thing that you can do is you imagine a white X going over the
Hmm.
visual, and just carrying it away, and that neutralizes it. So
Oh, that's cool.
everything that you do, I think, but it's within your own sovereign space. It's not
Yeah.
me saying your brain's not allowed to
Yeah.
terrify you anymore because
Hmm.
that invades your sovereignty, even if you say you want it.
Totally. I love that. Well,
Yeah.
it always keeps coming back to like, do you want to be healed?
Yeah.
You know, like sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But it's also, I love that though. I think it is really a beautiful thing to remind us all that magic is you. It is your energy, just like you're saying. And I think, going back to this sound wave, imprint that we're all making in one way or another with the energy that we make, like it's important if we're going to bring our power to bear with others that we learn how to harmonize. It's like, it is like music and we do have to kind of play well together. And I think about like, did you ever scream as loud as you could when you were a kid
Mhm.
with another friend, and then you would scream at a certain frequency and it would like cancel it out and then you wouldn't hear it? And I was like, what? That
Oh,
right?
I never
Like
did that. No,
oh
that's so
really?
cool.
Well, next time we're outside, we should try it. I'll show
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
It's actually like so weird, but try it. Anyone, just go scream really loud with your friend and you can get it to cancel each other out. But that is what
Everybody
happens.
scream like Florence and the Machine says.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That there's just two in particular. I think it just like those sound waves interact in a way that like can essentially like erase them almost
That's so cool.
from making an impact. Yeah, it is. It's like really interesting. So I don't know. I'm just riffing on this little metaphor, but I don't know. I
Yeah.
think it's fun. I
Yeah,
like it.
yeah. So the other hexes that I've done have been more personal, but I have a couple of hexes on my Substack at Fourth Cup, and one is a hex for white supremacy, and one is a hex for the patriarchy. And for me, when I did those hexes, the patriarchy one was super easy. It was very chill. It was like, this is not correct for me. And I feel very solidly that it's not correct for me. And the hex for white supremacy was like an exorcism. Like it was Like I set off a fire alarm. I immediately got an email from somebody who really hates me about all these things I had done wrong. Like it was all these white lady triggers, like just
Mhm.
immediately came up to like be expunged from my body. And I found it very valuable because not that I'm not still part of culture, not that I'm not still indoctrinated as a white lady, but like I do see myself engaging with the topic of racism differently
Mhm.
now. I don't know. It's sort of like a commitment of your energy that that's not correct for you.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then curses, we haven't talked about curses. I haven't done a curse, and I think that curses to me fall under controlling another person's energy. So I think that that's a topic that, like, that's
Mhm.
a category that I wouldn't be correct for me.
And same, to be honest. I mean, that's really all I have to say about curses. I don't personally think that it's my job to decide someone else's fate or what they should experience or something. Like that isn't me. I think us trying to take on what belongs to karma or the universe is foolhardy.
Yeah. I
Mm.
have done, there's a spell that's a Morrigan spell, a Black Feather Morrigan spell, and I've done that before. There's like a salt potion, and this is in Lori Cabot's Book of Shadows. But like black feathers can be used to sort of alert the spirits to harm, to a problem.
Mhm.
You know, it still kind of feels like a hex, though, because it really is about creating a boundary around harm, I
Mhm.
think,
Mhm.
more than but I think that's the closest that I've come to a curse, and that I've used for on a more institutional level for some local entities that I think have caused harm. That I will not specifically name in this
No,
podcast.
they don't need to be named at all.
No, but it's in Laura Cabot's Book of Shadows if you want to engage in a Morgan Blackfeather spell.
Nice.
Yeah.
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 So you're sovereign. That's the
Yeah.
point. You're sovereign, and there are different ways that you can enhance that sovereignty, and also lots of ways to respect other people's sovereignty while also practicing. Where do you want to put your power and energy? Like that's, I think, a part of what this is. Yeah, being
Yeah.
accountable and not being controlling and trusting. It's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. I 100% agree with your summary of what we're talking about.
OMG. I'm so excited that we worked it out like this.
And I think another component of it is just because uh, people are afraid of something doesn't mean it's dangerous. And just because
Mhm.
people think something is great, like enmeshment, doesn't mean it's safe, you
Yeah.
know? Like
Yeah.
you have to kind of try things out and see what's correct for your energy.
Yeah. Yeah. So go try some stuff. Let's keep
Yeah.
trying stuff. That's all we got.
So
Just more and more tries.
if somebody wants to try things out with you and find out more about their sexual self, even in the midst of maybe relationships that don't feel good for them, or
Mhm.
if they want to figure those things
If
out,
they
how
want
do
their relationships to feel good for them, I
yeah.
know. Yes. Go to my website, saraijohnson.com, SaraiJohnson.com. And you'll find all kinds of stuff there. One, a podcast you can download for your listening pleasure called Your Own Divinity, and also a quiz. I believe it's called your Sovereign Power Quiz at this moment, name pending change possibilities because of me, who I am as a person. But that's something there as well where you can see where are your chakras leaking or potentially where they might be blocked or where your energy is flowing well. And that sort of gives you a good snapshot of where you are, and your chakras are really a beautiful way to see the kind of joining of the spiritual to the physical. And so a really, I think, beautiful avenue into embodiment that most people can connect to, I think, pretty well. So yay. And how
Yeah.
about if they're like, what about my astrology, and maybe I want to talk to this hex witch over here, Meredith? What do they do to get in touch with you?
Thank you for asking. They can go to fourthcupastrology.com. And if they want to engage with the patriarchy, the hex on the patriarchy and white supremacy, they can go to Substack to at Fourth Cup and do those themselves. There's a whole description of how to do the spell, and there's a written spell for it that you can burn, that I like to burn. And
Yay.
great for me. Yeah.
Amazing. All right, everybody. Good job. Stay safe out there.
Yep. Thanks.